Everybody, it's Woody O'Brien. He knows the markets, and he is still, I believe, still on a mission to abolish fiat slavery. Woody, how are you?
Hey, John, great to be with you again. It's been too long.
It has been too long. It's always too long, but you got to refer to me as Chili D from now on, because this is at my new website, chilidshow.com, so you can't...
Chili D, got it.
Chili D. So, what in the world has been going on with you? And we'll start off with your farm. How's that going?
Well, the farm shut down for the winter, and all we're really kind of doing over the winter months is planning for next year, hoping to get a hemp permit to grow some organic industrial hemp, and selling a lot of firewood. And we still do some rock sales during the wintertime, but mostly it's taking care of the inside stuff and getting ready for better weather.
Is it a full-time deal? Is it? I mean, how many hours a week do you think you spend on the farm?
Oh, I would say it's a solid part-time deal. It's probably 15 to 20 hours a week if I count it all up.
Could you?
But I don't play golf. I don't have a boat. I don't play tennis. If at least I'm doing something that's making a buck and growing some good food.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about the food. Could you feed an entire family with the food you could grow there?
Oh, I would say if you could probably do a little better than that.
A little better. How many acres is it?
Yeah, because we have a total of 27, but when you farm organically, it's very difficult to do more than a couple, because organic farming is very labor intensive. There's not all the high-tech equipment that you can get for dry grain. Although, if we get a hemp permit, that'll be a dry grain crop that we'll have in the ground next year. That could all be automatically or planted with machines. So we might do 15 acres if we can get a permit. Now,
when you say hemp, are you talking about hemp as in hemp, non-smokable hemp, or do you mean hemp as in you could roll it?
No, I'm talking about non-smokable industrial grade hemp. You can make rope out of it. You can eat the seeds. You can make fuel out of it. Henry Ford made a car out of it. The founding fathers grew it and ate it and signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution on hemp paper. That kind of hemp.
Is that true that the Declaration of Independence?
The Declaration of is on hemp paper, as well as the Constitution, and the founders mostly grew hemp and they all ate it. The hemp hearts that you can buy at any Whole Foods store are a terrific superfood. I've eaten them for years and years, and hope to be maybe eating some I grow at some point in 2015.
Do you think the founding fathers were hitting the chronic?
I do not know, but I will tell you this. It's ridiculous that hemp is illegal to grow and legal to consume and buy, because if you wanted to smoke hemp, you'd have to smoke about 300 hemp cigarettes to get as much THC as you get from one marijuana cigarette, or one puff on one joint. So anybody thinks you're going to get high from hemp has not done the math.
Now, I've heard that if you smoke hemp, you actually just get a headache.
I don't know, and I'm not going to find out.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've just heard this. So
I've had enough headaches from the bear market in silver.
Oh, man, you and Panama Orange both have the most amazing segues. We could be talking about anything, and bam, we're going to go where you want to go. So we're talking about silver now. Everybody, it's Woody O'Brien. WoodyKnowsMarkets.com, and he also is abolishing fiat slavery at abolishfiatslavery.com. Can I make a comment here? I'm not going to hurt your feelings. I don't think I'm hurting your feelings. You're a big boy, but your websites look like they're circa 1995 creations.
Well, that's part of the charm of them, that they're not slick, and I'm just a plain old dirt farmer, and when people tell me that, I go, well, that's the thing that sets me apart from everybody else.
I'm with you.
There's no slick marketing in what I do.
That's true. But in this cynical world of alternative media, people might hear that and think, well, that's his angle. His angle is the non-slick angle. I don't think that's the case. I think you're...
Well, I tell No, I tell you, there's a lot of easier ways to make a living than the way I'm doing now. I would tell you anybody who had a calculator would never go into organic farming because it's a very difficult thing to make a living. And I always tell people if you think it's easy to make a living with a farm, try chopping firewood for 4 hours and then sell it for $90. It's not a lot of money.
Let me tell you something. And I planted 2 apple trees, 2 pear trees, a cherry tree, and 2 plum trees in my yard, as well as blackberries and raspberries and a stand of grapes. Now, I can tell you, in a decade, I have yet to get a whole crop of anything. And look, you can go out there and have a windstorm, and there go your plums, and that's it. They're gone. You can have, bugs one year eat your pears or go to your apples, or just for some reason it doesn't grow. I don't know how the folks that came before us ever survived. How would you go year to year? If you have a bad crop, you're screwed.
Well, I think for one thing, they were trying to monetize everything they do. But I would say, to show you how difficult it is, every July we have wild wine berries on the farm. And if you spend an hour picking them, and then turn around and sold that what you picked in an hour, you probably would have made more money if you had worked at McDonald's for an hour. So even when the price of the crop is free, it's hard to make money.
Well, yeah,
because it's very labor intensive. Labor's expensive.
At our at our local farmers market, one year I was haggling with a guy about some green beans, and he had like pint bags full of fresh green beans, organic green beans out of his garden. So he handed me a bag. It was a pint of green beans, and let's say they were $1.75. And I looked at him and I said, $1.75? He said, yeah. He said, if that's too much, I can drop it down to like $1.50 or $1.25. I said, no, I can't pay you only $1.75 for this. I said, I do my own, green beans myself, and I know that this is going to take you more than $1.75 just in labor. I can't pay you $1.75, so I paid him $3.50 a pint.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Well, I say but most farming is very, very labor intensive, and that's where the money is. And I think to try and make another segue, I remember when I was a young man thinking that if you made $50,000 a year, you'd be on Easy Street. That's about $25 an hour. But somebody who makes $25 an hour now, even doing farming, that's $52,000 a year. You're practically in poverty with what the currency has been inflated to and what the dollar will buy with $52,000 a year. Well, to me, it's astounding. There are people who make $30,000 a year and raise children on that, and I'm thinking they must be living at the edge of poverty to do it. Because all this stuff where the government, the Fed, says inflation is 2 to 3%, for the most part, it's baloney. It might be accurate right now because of the falling price of fuel, but as a general rule, the cost of living goes up and up and up and up because things like taxes and healthcare really aren't counted correctly.
Yeah. Well, I know people who earn as a household less than $50,000 a year and are raising families, and I also know people who are in that condition who don't go to the movies, they don't buy Christmas presents for their kids, they don't have new cars, a lot of the conveniences that people have today they don't have, and they do make it. But $50,000 today is, listen, I can remember in 1988, my mom was working for the state of Louisiana, and I think she was making at the time, and I'm going to be generous here, I'm going to think she was making like $9 an hour or something like that as a social worker. And I can remember when I got a job making $10 an hour, and she reminded me that I was making more than she was, and she had a college degree and had 25 years of experience, and I was making $10 an hour, and how thankful I should be for that. Well, let me tell you something. Now, in 2015, if all you're making is $10 an hour and that's your only source of income, there's no way you can provide for a family. It is impossible, and I don't care what they want to argue about, we shouldn't be raising the minimum wage. Look, don't worry about raising wages, lower prices or something, because you cannot make it on minimum wage. No way.
And the extremeness of the other side of this is we have absolutely the world's most arrogant banker in Jamie Dimon complaining that his bank only made $5 billion in a quarter, and how banks are all under attack. And you go, really? Are you really that disconnected from the reality?
Okay, hold on.
How bad it is for most Americans?
You're going somewhere that I want to get your opinion on. Look, I don't know if you've noticed this, and you might not watch as many YouTube videos as I do, but there has been a rise of what I'm calling the bank apologist in the last few years. I mean, every tick higher in the stock market, a lot of these folks that come out of the woodwork who love bankers, love the Fed. Banks are not set against us. They're good guys. They're on our side. Quit bitching and complaining. I mean, what do you make of that? Or do you even know the phenomena that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've seen that, and I would say they're people who fundamentally do not understand how banks make money. They don't understand the business model of a money center bank. They don't understand that banks are lending money that does not exist. They're collecting interest on money that does not exist.
That's right.
That's right. Except in alternate reality.
Right. Except for the fact. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say that they don't understand is that a bank is not a business in a capitalist sense. A bank is a crime family. It's a crime syndicate that basically is involved in the business of electronic looting.
It's funny. It's funny because the looting is probably a fair description. A lot of these bank apologists these days that say how wonderful the banks are seem to have forgotten that outside of TARP legislation and outside of, for example, Goldman Sachs getting paid 100 cents on the dollar from AIG and $12 billion in TARP and Warren Buffett propping them up with some of his cash, these banks wouldn't even exist outside of your tax-paying dollars keeping their doors open. This idea that banks are somehow, the best and the brightest and viable business models, they failed. They are disasters outside of TARP legislation and handouts and giveouts and bailouts.
Well, to steal a narrative from Peter Schiff, I'm going to say, imagine an island with 10 people, and 9 people worked all day long to, provide for fire and shelter and water. And one person sat around all day long, and at the end of the day would consume something everybody else made. And somebody who was a fan of banking would look at that and say, well, that 10th guy that eats up everything is the key to the whole system. Without him, everything would collapse. But in fact, if you threw that person into the water, the other 9 would live very, very well. The banks are the blood-sucking parasite ticks of our society. And that you're right, that they could not exist not just without the bailouts from the taxpayer. They could not exist without the Federal Reserve giving them money out the back door. They could not exist without the legal protection of a bald eagle, where they're basically a protected endangered species, where when they get caught red-handed laundering drug money or peddling fraudulent securities or ripping people off on subprime, they pay a fine, a couple pennies on the dollar of what they stole, and nobody goes to jail.
And the fines, and I've done videos on this before, where like a bank will get fined some crazy amount of money, but it just so happens to be the amount of money that was just a pittance, a percentage of what their stock price increase would cover, or what TARP legislation gave them to begin with. And there's anybody who defends these bankers does not understand what's actually going on. And there's just
part of it is we need a new banking model. Obviously, you need transactional banking, and you can do that with credit unions. But the model and with mortgage brokers, that's all can be done without banks. Banks need to be involved in taking
everybody, how you doing?
Making loans and making security transactions because they suck at banking.
They either suck at banking, or they've engineered a system that guaranteed they would have to take more money from us in the form of bailouts and handouts to then place us further and further under the yoke. I mean, it's either by happenstance or by design. We've been handed this system that bites all around.
Well, in the world of President Woody O'Brien, there would be no such thing as a money center bank or a commercial bank. You would have mutual funds, you would have hedge funds, you would have credit unions, you would have mortgage brokers. That's it. They cover all the functions that are necessary.
And if they go belly up, the taxpayers don't cover it, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. And all these idiots who say, oh, well, we have to have these big global banks to be competitive with other countries. And I go, actually, no, we don't. These banks are parasitical, blood-sucking ticks. And all they do in the system is steal from everybody else, and nobody goes to jail when they get caught.
Yeah.
If France or England wants to be the people stuck with all these big looters like Jamie Dimon and Lloyd Blankfein, let them have them. let them have them. Let's just let them sail off on a ship and wave to them goodbye. Go be a pox on some other country. We in order to have a working financial system, we don't need to have banks at all.
That's right, and that right there is the point. And whenever someone talks to me about how much I should be thankful that the banks exist, and for example, without high frequency trading, we wouldn't have liquidity in the markets and all that. Every time I hear this,
hey John, I want to ask you one question.
Sure.
Imagine for a second that we had a law that passed that said when you invest money in anything, whether it's any kind of security, even if it's a security retirement plan, and if you sell that security within 60 days and make a profit, the tax rate is 100%. I'll tell you what, if we would make that one reform, we would take a quantum leap forward towards organic, honest markets, because these people who buy something and 3 nanoseconds later sell it, they're not adding anything to the economy. They're just basically skimming. They have high frequency trading is a skimming machine. It ought to be illegal, and it's crazy that we don't make it illegal. We could say these people who are sucking pennies out of retirement plans, if we can't put them in jail, let's just say stop. Because if you do that kind of behavior, if you buy an investment, you sell it within 60 days, if you make a profit, the tax is 100%. If you lose money, you don't get to write it off other gains. That one reform, I think, would do more to make an honest system than anything else.
The real key to what you're talking about is an organic market, or some sort of quasi-organic market, and we don't have that in any market. This is one of the hallmarks of why in 2011 I was pretty confident that metals prices would come down, because I figured if they can jam it up, which is what was actually happening. In fact, I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. They can also jam it down. We see it in oil. We see it in commodities across the board. We see it in real estate. The rigging of the real estate market is fascinating. How come it is that the little guy couldn't go out there and buy homes collapsing in value in 2008, 2009? Oh yeah, that's right. Because all those prices were propped up, or banks did not take the losses they were supposed to take. And the Fed did quantitative easing it just backstop everything. There is no organic market in real estate or in food.
Well, if you want an organic market in America, you better go to a flea market, because that's about the only organic market left. And in terms of the manipulation of prices, and as you've always said, if they can manipulate them down, they'll manipulate them up. I will tell you, I think we're probably at the point of a new bull market in gold and silver, but that's going to be a manipulated market on the way up as much as it was on the way down.
Let's talk about that for a moment, about the precious metals market and manipulation, because there's an interesting statistic. I talked with Kerry Lutz for the Financial Survival Network. Have you ever been on his show, by the way?
Yeah, I've been on his show a bunch of times.
Okay. I talked with Kerry today about this, and he didn't know the statistic I'm getting ready to tell you. If I were to tell you, who do you think the number 1 and number 2 holders of stock in Eric Sprott's ETF are? Number 1 and number 2 institutional holders.
I have no idea.
Just take a shot in the dark.
Probably banks.
Number 1 is Morgan Stanley, and number 2 is J.P. Morgan. And the number 3 position is held by Eric Sprott's trust. So I just think that if you want to know where metals prices are going to go next, look at what banks own in terms of these paper products and also in the miners. And don't worry about cost of production in the mines. Don't worry about whether retailers go out of business. Don't worry about whether or not you and your stack have got to get back to even. The way you know eventually prices are going to rise is these bankers own a bunch of paper products, and they can't wait to sell those off to you at higher prices. They can't wait. So that to me is a tell. Now, in terms of where prices go, I don't know what the ultimate top is going to be on the next move, or that we've even seen the bottom. But if I were to ask you, what would you say? Have we seen the bottom?
I think the bottom is in. And I think the flash bottom of December 1st, where we in silver had a 12% move in under 12 hours, that was such a dramatic selling climax. I don't think we're ever going to go below that. The chart looks beautiful at this point. Obviously, there's a lot that can happen. This thing that just happened in Switzerland is very interesting. This is a significant rocket-propelled grenade in a currency war. It shows the system is still voluntary, and when people refuse to volunteer anymore, you can have these price shocks. And I just think, as a general rule, the less government is trusted, the less banks are trusted, the less central banks are trusted, the more turmoil, the more people who are going to be afraid enough to buy gold and to buy silver.
Yeah, let me ask you about the currency shock that is the Swiss franc. It did not create the sort of movement in commodity markets I would have expected. It certainly didn't do anything to the dollar. Are we going to get a delayed reaction on some of this? Are people going to wake up in a month and go, okay, yeah, maybe I should start moving into some metals right now?
Well, the dollar certainly moved down a lot versus the Swiss franc. It didn't do a whole lot versus the other dirty toilet paper.
Okay, fair enough.
I think this is not a nuclear explosion. It's a rocket-propelled grenade, and this is going to be the first of many, many events. It certainly gave me pause to make me think about that Swiss vote on November 30th. What if it had gone the other way?
Okay, right. Well,
you got this much of a reaction from just the delinking to the euro. Imagine what would have happened if they had demanded their gold back and put a gold backing behind the Swissy. But yeah, I would tell you, because I got to get going here in about a minute. This is the first of many currency war events you're going to see, and they're going to be even more dramatic in the future.
All right, well, fair enough. Real quick, do you have any price targets you want to throw out there? I don't know.
Well, I've always said that gold had to be $35.35 and silver had to be $103 an ounce just to catch up to the